Inauguration protests. As dozens of Democrats say they won't attend Friday's ceremony, Republicans accuse them of being sore losers. School choice. Donald Trump's pick to lead the education department could impact families who want to send their kids to Catholic schools. Abortion numbers down. We'll hear from both sides about a new pro-abortion report. Talking to animals, why cows, chickens, and sheep took center stage today at the Vatican. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, January 17, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. More than 40 House Democrats will be no-shows at Donald Trump's inauguration. They say the president-elect is a threat to democracy, but Republicans are dismissing the boycott, calling Democrats sore losers. Representatives Steve Cohen of Tennessee, Gerald Nadler of New York, and Don Beyer of Virginia join the growing list of Democrats who say they will not attend Trump's inauguration. The number is rising after Trump lashed out against Representative John Lewis of Georgia, who called Trump an illegitimate president. Martin Luther King III, who prayed with Trump yesterday, is calling for unity.
At some point, this nation, we've got to move forward. We can't stay on. I mean, people are literally probably dying. We need to be talking about how do we feed people? How do we clothe people? How do we create the best education system?
But dozens of lawmakers disagree.
When I heard that Trump denigrated and disrespected the greatest icon and civil rights leader of our time, John Lewis, I could not believe it. This was just the last straw.
Republicans are dismissing the boycott.
Democrats lost. Donald Trump won. You may not like him. You might not agree with his agenda, just like we didn't agree with President Obama's agenda. But show up.
Also showing up on Inauguration Day and over the weekend, thousands of protesters. One organizer is Code Pink, a left-leaning women's group that promotes social justice.
We want to send a message to people around this country that are afraid of Trump that, let's not get depressed. Let's not just say, okay, I'm not going to deal with politics. Let's get out there and organize.
As for the boycott by Democrats, Trump's press secretary reportedly says it's disappointing, but frees up good seats for others. Top Democrats are still expected to attend the swearing-in, but they're not calling out their colleagues. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says each person has to make their own choice. One of the biggest protests will be the Women's March the day after Trump's inauguration, but it seems pro-life women are not welcome. The group New Wave Feminists says it was dropped from the list of official sponsors after organizers realized they are pro-life. Despite being rejected, the group still intends to participate in the event, and they are asking pro-life women to join them. The nonprofit was founded in 2007 to, quote, take feminism back from those who have corrupted it. Trump is shrugging off polls that show him with low approval ratings. A new Gen Forward survey says young Americans expect to be worse off after his presidency. The president-elect tweeted, the same people who did the phony election polls and were so wrong are now doing approval rating polls. They are rigged just like before. Conscience rights are being raised as many voice their objection to Donald Trump's presidency. A Rockette and member of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir refused to perform at Trump's inauguration because of the president-elect's rhetoric and policies. Joining us now is Jordan Lawrence, senior counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom. So Jordan, in recent years, conscience rights have been cited by conservative groups, and it seems like more recently now we've been hearing them from more liberal groups. Is this kind of an area now where they can find common ground?
Well, I hope so, that no one should be compelled to either participate in a ceremony or to advocate a message they disagree with. And we've been trying at Alliance Defending Freedom to get that message out. But the opposition to Donald Trump is giving us a new opportunity to explain that, because when the Rockettes, the woman in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, even the Airbnb owners in Washington, D.C., that are refusing to rent Inauguration Day housing to Trump supporters, are making the same kinds of arguments. I, in good conscience, cannot participate in something I disagree with.
Well, people in power don't always agree with the majority of citizens. Isn't in the Constitution built something that can protect those people's choice or conscience?
Yes. I mean, we have to be careful whenever the government is exercising coercive power. And if we give the government the power to force people to participate in ceremonies or to advocate messages they don't agree with, somebody you don't agree with could become the leader of the country and force you to violate your conscience.
People who said it was wrong, for example, for a flower shop to refuse to provide flowers for a gay wedding are now saying it's okay for businesses to refuse Trump support like we were referring to before. Isn't that also a bit hypocritical?
Well, it sure is. I mean, there's dress designers in New York City that are refusing because of conscience to sell clothes to Ivanka and Melania, the new First Lady. And they're making the same sorts of arguments that dresses convey messages, they communicate a worldview. And that's what we've been saying about flowers and wedding cakes, as well as clear message bearing things like photographs or T-shirts and things like that.
Well, the Alliance Defending Freedom, as we said, has been very concerned about this issue for a long time now. Are you optimistic things are moving in the right direction?
Well, this is very helpful to see that what we are advocating for benefits all Americans. This is not just for some narrow group of people that are objecting. It's a misuse of these discrimination laws to punish people in a way where they're being forced to participate in ceremonies or to advocate messages they don't agree with. This is a right that if they win, everybody wins.
Very good. Jordan Lawrence, Senior Counsel with the Alliance Defending Freedom, thanks so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Confirmation hearings start for 2 of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks. Montana Representative Ryan Zinke is the nominee for Secretary of Interior. He opened the hearing talking about his childhood.
Well, as a son of a plumber and a kid who grew up in a small timber town and railroad town in Whitefish near Glacier Park, I am humbled to be before you as a President-elect's designee for Secretary of Interior.
Zinke is a decorated former Navy SEAL and former state senator. He is in his 2nd term in Congress. Trump's pick to lead the education department is in the hot seat tonight. School choice advocate Betsy DeVos says a one-size-fits-all model of learning doesn't work. She's promising to promote charter, religious, and other alternatives to public schools if confirmed. Jason Calvi gives us a look at how Catholic schools could be impacted. Jason?
Wyatt, I spent the morning at a Catholic school where half the students receive a voucher, an up to $12,000 scholarship. Without that money, these kids wouldn't be able to afford a Catholic education. But some critics are raising their voices against these school choice programs, and big supporter Betsy DeVos.
What do we want? Not the vote! When do we want it? Now!
Dozens descend on the Capitol to slam Betsy DeVos, Donald Trump's pick for Education Secretary.
We are failing our students in Michigan, and to even have her on the list is insane to me.
DeVos has spent more than 2 decades pushing for school choice programs, nationally and in her home state of Michigan. That's where Dawn Wilson Clark has sent her 5 kids to 22 different schools.
That choice is not working in Detroit.
School choice programs give parents alternatives to traditional public schools. That includes tax credits or vouchers, helping poor students attend Catholic or other private institutions. Vouchers are critical to students here at Archbishop Carroll High School in Washington, D.C. Half of the 380 kids receive a voucher called the D.C. Opportunity Scholarship. Junior Karan Harris is one of them.
It's amazing. It's like I have this freedom of choice, and I like being able to choose for myself.
And that choice is what DeVos says she wants for every family. School President Beth Blaufus points to the D.C. voucher program as a model.
Low-income families should have the same choices that upper-income families should have. Vouchers are not about public schools being bad. They're about choice being a good thing.
Gay groups are going after DeVos, saying she funded conservative religious groups that promote traditional family values. In apparent response to those criticisms, DeVos says every child in America deserves to be in a safe environment, free from discrimination. She's been open about her Christian faith, saying it inspires her work to reform U.S. education. Wyatt?
Jason Calvi reporting from Capitol Hill. Thanks, Jason. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. A Pakistani woman is sentenced to death for burning her own daughter alive in a so-called honor killing. The woman told a court she killed her daughter for, quote, bringing shame to her family for eloping. Her son, the victim's brother, helped with the crime. He was sentenced to life in prison. The two tied the 18-year-old to a bed and lit it on fire. The sentences are part of a new anti-honor killing law that took effect in October. A tragic story in Nigeria. Officials say an Air Force fighter jet on a mission to bomb Boko Haram extremists mistakenly hit a refugee camp. More than 100 refugees and aid workers were killed. This is believed to be the first time Nigeria's military has admitted to making such a mistake. The suspect in the New Year's nightclub attack in Turkey has reportedly confessed. Investigators blame ISIS for the crime. They also detained 4 other people in connection with the attack. The shooting left 39 people dead and dozens wounded. And the widow of the Orlando nightclub shooter was in court a day after her arrest. A 2-count indictment accuses Noor Salman of misleading police officers and FBI agents who were investigating the June attack at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. She'll be back in court tomorrow to discuss her extradition from California to Florida. The nearly 3-year hunt for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 is over. Australian, Malaysia, and Chinese officials all suspended the search. Crews spent $160 million to look for the missing plane in the Indian Ocean. The flight vanished in March of 2014 with 239 people on board. British Prime Minister Theresa May makes it clear the UK will make a clean break from the European Union and leave its single market of some 500 million people.
Bits of membership as we leave. No, the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union, and my job is to get the right deal for Britain as we do.
May says she doesn't want the UK to be half in and half out or an associate member of the EU. Britain's Parliament will be able to vote on the final Brexit deal between the UK and the European Union. The Vatican reaffirms its confidence in a commission appointed to investigate the Knights of Malta. The Pope ordered the probe last month to see what led to the dismissal of one of the group's top officials. The Knights of Malta was founded in Jerusalem during the 11th century. Members of the Catholic lay order served the church through their work with the poor and the sick and their witness of the Catholic faith. The Knights are saying they will not cooperate with the Vatican's inquiry, saying it interferes with their sovereign status. Lauren Ashburn spoke earlier today with the National Catholic Register's Rome correspondent.
Ed Penton, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register, joins us. What led to today's announcement from the Vatican, Ed?
Well, it all stems really from the dismissal in December of the Grand Chancellor, who's the third in charge of the Order of Malta, who was dismissed and because of his involvement in distribution of contraceptives. At least he was ultimately responsible for that over the past couple of decades. He refused to go. He was asked to resign. He refused to resign, and so he was dismissed. And that has led to the Vatican setting up a commission of investigation just to obtain information into exactly what happened.
What's the Vatican saying about the role of the commission appointed by the Pope?
Well, the commission, the trouble with the commission for the Order of Malta, as far as they're concerned, is that it impinges on their sovereignty. The Order of Malta is a sovereign subject. So to have the Holy See intervene on an issue of what they call internal governance is interference in their sovereignty. So the Knights of Malta are opposed to this commission, but the Holy See, in a statement today, has restated its willingness for this commission to go forward against the wishes of the Order of Malta.
So how do you think this will be resolved? Is that it?
Well, there's plenty anything could really happen, but I understand that both the Order and Cardinal Parolin, the Secretary of State, have been in private talks earlier this month to try and resolve this. And I think they're all going to try and find a way to resolve it in which everyone saves face, including the Grand Chancellor, Albrecht Böselager. I think that's what they're trying to find a solution to. Whether they'll be able to achieve it, of course, we'll just have to wait and see.
Ed Penton, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register. Thanks, Ed, for joining us.
Thanks, Dawn.
Coming up, protecting the unborn. We'll get reaction from the pro-life movement about a new pro-abortion report. Lessons in history, how previous presidents could serve as an example for Donald Trump. Planned Parenthood will be removed from a Texas Medicaid program unless a judge says otherwise. Texas officials say secretly recorded videos taken by a pro-life group at a Planned Parenthood clinic justify cutting off the organization from Medicaid funding. Other judges have stopped Arkansas and other states from dropping Planned Parenthood in the wake of the videos. A pro-abortion group says the annual number of abortions in the U.S. has dropped under 1 million, the lowest level since 1974. The Guttmacher Institute conducts research for Planned Parenthood. It says newly released figures from 2014 show abortions fell 12.5%. Americans United for Life say this is evidence that pro-life laws are working, and we have a reason to celebrate. But AUL acting president Clark Forsyth cautions we have to take the abortion industry's claims with a grain of salt. President-elect Donald Trump will be sworn in using two Bibles. The Presidential Inaugural Committee says Trump will use his childhood Bible and the Bible Abraham Lincoln used at his first inauguration in 1861. Donald Trump has proven himself immune from conventional wisdom and politics, but as he assumes the office that only 44 others have occupied, are there historical lessons he might find helpful? Joining us now is New York Times best-selling author and historian Jay Winnick. Jay, you've written several books focused on pivotal moments in history, and at some point presidents really have to face something they've never anticipated before. Noting how Trump sort of lacks a clear ideology, how do you think he's going to face some of these pivotal moments?
Well, I think the first thing for him to remember and for him to bear in mind is that the first rule of being president is expect the unexpected. He's going to have his hand be put on the Bible by Abraham Lincoln. Well, Abraham Lincoln, after he got inaugurated, he assembled a gaggle of reporters and he said, well, boys, your troubles are over, mine have only just begun. Little did he know that a great war would commence that would consume 620,000 lives, 18 million lives in today's parlance. So the rule of thumb is, whatever you think you're preparing for, the agenda will change and you'll be hit by something different.
You've also written about the isolation of the presidency at certain points where the president has to make a critical decision. Most of the time, he's got to make it on his own as commander-in-chief. Noting that Trump has a pretty good relationship with his children and really trusts them the most, how do you think that's going to play into him making some of those tough decisions?
Well, certainly I think it's the case that he'll be leaning on them. He'll be leaning on them both for emotional support as well as for intellectual advice. But the fact of the matter is no matter how gregarious a president may be, i.e. how gregarious Trump is, no matter how involved his advisors or his family is, no matter how ardent his supporters are, he's going to find when faced with some of the tough decisions, whether it be with Russia or ISIS or Syria or the common working man at home, that the White House is a forlorn and often very lonely place indeed.
Donald Trump's confidence, though, seems unmatched, at least so far during the campaign. Who do you think in history sort of matches that, at least in terms of his connection with the electorate, and who do you think he can learn from?
Well, I think it's good to have confidence. Confidence is good. George Washington had confidence, although after 2 terms of being president, in which he was elected unanimously both times, he was ready to go. I think it's safe to say, though, while confidence matters, if he could learn one thing, Donald Trump, it's that humility matters as well, because he will not know the next great crisis looming around the bend, and things don't get resolved as easily as you'd like. So confidence matters, so does humility.
Last question really quickly, Jay. Any other presidents you advise Trump to study?
Certainly Lincoln. I think he's taken an interest in Ronald Reagan, and that makes a lot of sense. Reagan had a big, bold agenda. He was underestimated by his opponents and his critics. So I think he'll find something in Reagan. I think he would find something in FDR, who transformed the nature of America. Donald Trump wants this to be a transformative presidency, and I think he loves his country. He's a natural politician. He can accomplish significant things. He should learn from history, though.
Very interesting stuff. Jay Winnick, historian in residence for the Council on Foreign Relations. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Up next, courageous Christians.
La speranza è lottare, aggrappato alla corda.
The Pope's message as we pray for Christian unity this week. Celebrating a saint. We'll tell you why animals are popping in at the Vatican for St. Anthony the Abbot's memorial. Pope Francis calls on the faithful to be courageous Christians.
È un'ancora sicura e salda.
In his homily today at his residence, the Holy Father encouraged everyone to be anchored in hope and able to endure in difficult moments. Pope Francis says hope is the virtue that's least understood, but strongest. The Pope's message comes on the eve of the International Week of Prayer for Christian Unity. The event began more than 100 years ago to bring Christians together through the love of Christ. After a year-long investigation, the Department of Justice released a report last week blasting Chicago's police department for using excessive force.
The Department of Justice has concluded that there is reasonable cause to believe that the Chicago Police Department engages in a pattern or practice of use of excessive force in violation of the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution.
As the city struggles to contain violence and improve police and community relations, there are bright spots on the force. One of them is Catholic Antonio Herrera, who last year received an honor for his heroism. Lauren Ashburn spoke with him earlier today.
We are happy to welcome Officer Herrera to the program. There were more than 750 murders in Chicago last year, and the Department of Justice report about the police department was very critical. Does this tell the whole story?
The true story is that police officers put in a lot of long hours that go unaccounted for. They're very involved with the community, even on their own personal time while off duty. Sometimes these officers go above and beyond the call of service from their own pockets.
Tell me, though, what you think does need to happen to improve the murder situation in Chicago.
Well, one thing that is happening now, the department is beefing up their numbers. They went on a hiring spree. They are putting more numbers, more officers, more seasoned officers into the detective division. They're bringing new technology to the department. I think that the department, like anything else, is adapting to the increase in homicides and violent crimes that we had this past year.
You are Catholic. How, as a police officer of one of America's toughest cities, how often do you rely on your faith, and how do you rely on your faith?
Every day. Every day you rely on your faith. I know I've been on calls and I've heard myself asking myself, Lord, help me on this one. What am I going to do here? And lo and behold, by the time I get to the person, by the time I get to that client, I reach out of the back pocket and pull something and resolve the situation, and everyone leaves content. And it's something that, I'm very grateful to have.
Well, congratulations on your award, and good luck on the streets of Chicago. We'll be thinking of you. Chicago Police Officer Antonio Herrera, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
And finally tonight, animals take over the Vatican today. Cows, chickens, sheep, and donkeys all took center stage for the annual Blessing of the Animals on the feast of St. Anthony the Abbot. St. Peter's Square featured a makeshift livestock pen. The farm animals were joined by cats and dogs brought by their owners and a police band on horseback. St. Anthony was a monk who lived in the 3rd and 4th century. He's known as the patron saint of domestic animals because of his regard for all animals during his lifetime. And for all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. Good night, and God bless.